Primal Nerds. Wubba-lubba-dub-dub, and welcome to the Squanch podcast of Primal Nerds at FanCon 2018. We are joined today by one of the organizers of FanCon,
me,
Mahdi Abrahams,
yes.
And international comic book artist and writer, Declan Shalvey, all the way from Dublin, Ireland. Mm-hmm. Welcome, gentlemen. Are you guys happy with what you've seen? This was your first time at an African.
Yeah. I mean, it's every show is always different, but it's been nice. Everyone seems so grateful, like happy to have a show here. You know, everyone just seems so delighted and pleased. It's really nice kind of vibe about the place.
And how are the organisers feeling? Happy with the first day behind the back?
Look, obviously we're evaluating everything, but it's definitely looking good. It's definitely better than last year.
A year's planning.
Yeah,
in 2 days.
Yes, definitely. It's crazy, but in the last 6 months is when it really gets to crunch time, and that's when we really have to get to it. You know.
Yeah. Okay, let's quickly get to all with you. FanCon, this is the third official, the large Comic-Con that we had for Cape Town. Yeah. Do you focus just on geek culture? Or
okay, well, the idea is, look, in South Africa, people here are not yet used to having the Comic-Con experience, obviously. So we do want to cater to everything. That's why you'll see the show simply it's got gaming and anime and manga, movies and TV, a little bit of everything, cosplay also a lot. But we do want to keep the show primarily comics, because that we feel is what it's dedicated to, the arts of comics and the culture of comics. So this is why it's reflected in our guests. You'll see most of our international guests are comic artists. And then we do 1 or 2 cosplayers, and then we bring in all the local creators and artists. So we focus it towards comics, but it's definitely, we do align it with all the other geek-related cultures.
It's got similarly in Ireland, the biggest show tends to, like, there's always like a media aspect of actors,
that's right.
And there's like the cosplay aspect, and there's comics, and it can be unfortunate because there's some shows that lean more into media, which I'm less interested in personally, because I want to meet artists and creators and people who want to do the craft. But it is a weird balance.
It is true. Yeah. It's something that we are aware of, because look, all over the world, Comic-Cons it seems to be a mixture of this media and comics, and unfortunately media does tend to take over a lot of the conventions or corporate events. It's really very, very commercial. So we tend to not go that route. We are really fans of art. That is who we are. And we want to stick to that, you know.
The biggest thing with you guys is by the community, for the community.
Yes. I mean, that's where we come from.
Let's quickly jump just into your background, and then we get to why you also focus more on a comic aspect as well. Yes. You guys started as this is the third one, the first one in 2006, the official.
2016.
2016. Sorry, my bad. Well, you started back in the 1990s with selling secondhand books at Greenpoint flea markets. And then going to premises, you had to get a new venue, a new location, where you then moved to Stadium on Main in Claremont. And also a second shop in Tiger Valley Centrum, and San Diego you went in 2002, but definitely a much different vibe.
Definitely a much different vibe, but fortunately it was long ago enough to be, it felt like a comic show still at that point. I think very soon after that, definitely changed to something else. It's now a media circus, as far as I understand it. I haven't been there recently.
I've been twice.
You've been there twice.
I went maybe not too long after you'd been. Okay. It was my very first San Diego Comic Con, and that was, I mean, I bumped into the cast of Battlestar Galactica. Like, it was already definitely on its way to media. And I was there again about 3 years ago, and it was even more so. It was incredibly hectic. I mean, there's still comics there. If you're going to go there for comics, it's certainly there. But
I think it's starting more to go about the glam and not about the roots of everything.
It's just look, if you're dealing with a mass audience, lowest common denominator is kind of what you go for.
Yeah, you have to go, which brings them money.
Yeah, exactly. If you want money, you need people who are willing to shell out, and they shell out for things that they know, not things that they don't know. So if they know who the guy who plays Superman is, they'll go for that.
It's a blind demand.
Yeah, and it's it's unfortunate that it's tough because to do anything cultural, it makes it very hard to lean into the cultural aspect of it when really the people show up are for very obvious media recognition reasons. It's frustrating. Because I helped run a show in Dublin a few years ago. We had similar problems. We didn't do any media at all, but it was hard to get people to come in because they're dealing with I don't know if it's similar here as in Ireland, but we don't have a huge culture of reading comics. It's not ingrained in our culture so much. We think that it's getting better and it's become more popular. But for storytelling, we're more known for writers, not artists as such. But sorry.
No,
please.
So it's always the balance of wanting to do a festival. Ireland doesn't necessarily have the population pool to be able to get enough people to come, to support something like that. So
more Comic Cons and stuff like that popping up because there's not.
I've gone to festivals in Europe that are just comics. They're amazing.
Pure
comics. But I mean, those things are it's more ingrained in their culture to casually read comics.
It's difficult. You can also testify.
Yeah, no, it's definitely.
There's specialty items here.
Definitely a similarity in terms of what you're saying. In terms of South Africa, also has a very small culture of comics. It's very narrow. It's very focused. If we didn't bring in the gaming and the cosplay, the show would definitely be much smaller.
There's still a little bit of not a stigma, but
there is a stigma. We unfortunately in South Africa we've inherited that stigma of comics being an inferior art.
Or the nerds or the geeks.
Yeah, the American values are sort of aligned with that in terms of our culture. So it's looked upon still to this day as something not quite high art.
Yeah, but it's also strange because culturally to be nerd is more accepted and celebrated than ever before.
So no. That is a new
It's now
thing.
fashionable too.
It's fashionable.
Yeah, back in my day, it wasn't cool.
It's what they say. The geek has come out of the basement. The geek now owns the house. He lives in the basement out of preference. Not because he has to.
Shelves with figurines.
Exactly. So he lives in the basement, but he still owns the house.
Just to come back to FanCon, you originated actually from a annual gathering at your store from 2002, 2003, right? Roundabouts. Every year with a free comic book day.
Yes.
Giving away comic books.
Especially
that will pull people, and then people started to do cosplays more.
That came a bit afterwards. Cosplay was also very became something as well too.
And then when did you then decide to jump in 2016 to have your first proper at a
been
larger
a long
venue?
Sort of process. What happened? We are retailers. We are comic book store. Me and my brothers. And in 2002, when FCBD was first promoted and Diamond Comics did that, we said, okay, let's jump onto this. Let's see if this does something for our store. So we did it. I think we had just about 100 people at our first one. So it was a story when we felt it was worth our while. We did it the following year. The following year we kept on going with FCBD. It grew slowly every year. More people came. The event expanded. I think by the time it got to the 10th one, we felt it began to feel like a Comic-Con experience. The cosplayers started to come on board. We got local artists setting up tables, selling their own comics. And at that point, it got to a point where people were saying, there were a lot of rumblings about, why don't we do a Comic-Con in South Africa? It's not being done. When is it going to happen? Then people approach us and say, why don't you guys do it? You've got experience doing this.
Because we have Icon and Rage and that being, but that's in Johannesburg.
But at the same time, it's like, screw you pay for it.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? It's like, what the hell?
Nice to give the ideas. Thank you for that.
No, it got to a point where initially it was, okay, we'd back somebody, we definitely back someone who wants to do a comic convention. We didn't say we want to do it. And year in and year out, okay, nobody's doing this. And they said, I told my brother, look, why don't we just do this? We laid the groundwork with FCBD. We've got some experience with an event. Let's just turn this thing on its head and turn it into a comic convention. Get international comic artists. Let's try inviting people. Get a panel program going. Make it like a convention. And that's exactly what we did.
Like it is. I mean, well, one just important thing though I'd like to say is that I feel like comic conventions are the lifeblood of the community. Like having something for everyone to kind of look forward to.
That's right.
And like if you're an indie comics guy, then you want to make sure that you have your comic done for FanCon for a new audience. If you were
like
cosplay, it gives people a kind of an event date a thing, for an expectation to build excitement towards, you know.
And with FanCon, also sorry to interrupt you, we've seen how people posting in groups, 2 months to FanCon,
Which is great.
15 days to FanCon.
It's having things like, for lack of a better word, momentous events to look forward to rather than going to the comic shop every week, which of course you want, but it just adds more excitement to it.
It needs something else. It needs these bumps, these.
But but it feeds as well. Like we had conventions in Ireland, and I invited my editor at Vertigo, and he came and he met other Irish creators, and then he ended up being the Batman editor, and he hired another Irish artist to do Grayson. These things, like having becoming more involved creatively with other creators and editors begets more success, and then I ended up doing Batman, and now if I do a signing I get more people because I did Batman. So
because you did Batman, yes.
Exactly,
right,
and it all feeds, like you supporting local creators and bringing international creators means that now I know Jason better, and I know Sean better, and it
so what you know too,
well, it is.
It's exactly the same. You've got not clicks always necessary. That's perhaps a bad word for it, but people know one another and think, I've got this opening. I know a few guys.
Sure.
And let's go and take that many time with even with big Hollywood productions or anything.
It's a cycle effect, and there's a network that you're building. One thing leads to another. It's amazing how it actually works. I mean, a lot of our contacts with people came from our previous guests, for instance. Not in your case, I think your contacts
just so
were fairly
amazing. You were just naturally you got to ask for this guy.
No, most welcome. But I mean, it's not always the case. One of the difficulties, I think you want to get to that eventually, but one of the difficulties is trying to get the contact information of comic creators. It's not always possible.
Yeah, you can't just climb on Google and...
We did try that initially. We went to publishers, but they were very, very reluctant to give out. Perhaps rightly so, I don't know. There are things in place.
Yeah, some are
many of them go with the bigger names, unfortunately. The ones they feel comfortable.
Yeah. Well, some make themselves more available than others too.
In some cases, it's near impossible. And we literally had to go by word of mouth in some cases to.
But it also
is
that's a good litmus test for people, because I think I mentioned to Jamie that I was invited, and he spoke really well of it. So
that's right.
So that was,
Jamie,
there
is that, yes.
The word gets around pretty well if it's a good show.
I believe it. I think it was John Lehman mentioned when he was here last year. He said, we know so many people. I think it's him and Ron Mars and Matt Hawkins. They were all there, and they said between all of us here, we know so many people. If we give out the wrong word about a convention, it's going to spread so fast, and vice versa. If you put out a good word,
word of mouth is
it's amazing in that community, in the comic creator community.
Word
of mouth spreads a lot in terms of that. So we try to put on a decent show. We're not a big convention, and that's what we do.
Quickly jump to you, Declan. Let's introduce you. Welcome.
Hey, that's me.
Well, this is all the way from Dublin, Ireland. Comic book artist and writer. You worked, or your first big gig was Marvel in 2010.
That was my first American work.
Thunderbolts.
Yeah.
And what else with your journey with Marvel? Else was Venom, Deadpool. What else?
Yeah, over the course of about 5 or so years, I worked my way up the ranks at Marvel, and.
How was it for you as a young artist when you just started? I mean, first big job with a big name. What motivated, what pushed you when you sometimes, because sometimes you feel, someone doing this, other larger names?
We do, but everybody has this kind of imposter syndrome. We just have to kind of. Look, everybody up to the biggest names there are. Everyone thinks
started somewhere.
Name the biggest artist. I'm sure they'd feel the same. But it's just a case of sticking the head down and trying to get the work done. I've been fortunate to have a good work ethic. So also, when you achieve so much, you don't want to just make a mess of it either. So it's just concentrating on trying to do good work and being on time and being good to work with, and trying to do good work, and eventually you just kind of hopefully build up a name for yourself, and ultimately you get you graduate up onto a bigger book. So bigger book for me was Venom, and a bigger book was Deadpool, and I did an arc on. I revamped the character Moon Knight with Warren Ellis for Marvel, and that kind of, even though it had been a Marvel for 5 years, that was kind of the first thing people really. A lot of people found me on Moon Knight.
So it's good exposure for you as well, and to get your journey.
Yeah, I didn't get exposure the whole time, but it was good to be seen. A lot of working in American comics means you could be the second or third or fourth artist on a run. Moon Knight, I launched that book, so it was more closely identified with my work, which was great for an artist to get that sense of kind of attachment to to all the visuals you come up with. But then after that, Warren and I decided to do a creator-owned book at Image Comics, which is Injection, and we've been working on that ever since. It's been got 3 volumes out now, 3 graphic novels, with 2 more to go. And I kind of tend to do something short in between arcs. So I did All-Star Batman with Scott Snyder a couple of years ago, and I wrote and drew the Fury story last year. And this year I'm working on something from I don't think I can say. I'm working on a work for hire miniseries at the moment, and then when that's finished, I'll go back to Injection. So it's kind of I have the advantage of being able to do like creator-owned work that I feel like really passionately about, and also work for hire gigs where I like the characters a lot. So much so that I released a graphic novel last year that I wrote. Time goes by so fast, but what was nice was I wanted to start writing more, and as it turned out, an editor was looking for someone to write and draw a Nick Fury storyline, and I was writing my graphic novel for Image at the time. So in a weird way, I started Nick Fury as I was starting Savage Town, and I ended Savage Town as I was starting Deadpool vs. Old Man Logan, because that ended up helped getting me that job to write Deadpool vs. Old Man Logan, which I didn't draw. It's kind of people are very open to me writing and drawing things, but it's harder to kind of just write something, you know, because I'm known more for drawing.
You did the covers though.
I did the covers, I did the covers. I think I generally will try to do covers for something I write, just to.
It's always good to do the covers.
Sneak that in, yeah.
Yeah, no, of course.
It's actually funny if you look at the one Simpsons episode. They did it. The writer got all the recognition. I don't know if you ever saw the episode with Lisa, you know, with Sad Girl. The one episode with Marge sketching, and no one wanted Marge because she was the artist.
Yeah, well, that's
your thing, really.
Yeah, that's too close to home. It's a thing I talk about a lot called art cred. In that, a lot of writers tend to get a disproportionate amount of credit as regards making the work. You know, if you ever refer to someone to a run on a book, you refer to the writer's name, not the artist's name. There's those are reasons for it, but I heard about that episode of The Simpsons. I was like, wow, that's you know, that's pretty close to the bone.
Well, Declan will be talking about that tomorrow between the art cred panel, specifically about that. Yes.
To get to the question you also already started answering just a bit earlier on, but yeah, how is the process then of scouting and booking your artists? I know you said it's not always easy, you know, just like Googling and that, and it's word of mouth, but how do you decide? Is always just do you get feedback from your community as well?
I think we do at least one post very early on where we ask people online, what would you like to see? Not that we can necessarily get
just
those people,
get
a sense of it, get a sense where people are leaning towards, and looking at names that are also realistic for us to get. Some names are very big names. They have terms that are not necessarily
like first class tickets or something you can afford. And
it's you know, that's out of our range basically. So and we know those will be the terms we don't invite because we can't meet those terms, so we don't. So then we look at names that will definitely work for our show, names that we feel will resonate with what we are doing, and we work from there like a long list, and we start working on trying to get contact information for these people. So you end up not getting a lot. Well, I'd say about half to a third you end up actually getting information publicly. Then we rely on publishers. That hasn't been very successful, but I think the first show definitely helped us a lot. We had 3 guests only for our first show, and all 3 of them were very helpful in putting us in touch with other guests we were considering for our upcoming shows. And that got the ball rolling, and then last year again we met new people, and they in turn gave us contacts with other people. Became almost like a ghost-to-ghost network, you could say. Kind of spread like you know. So eventually ended up with a lot of contact information for people who would not necessarily have gotten. And that's a huge thing to sort of to work through, and that definitely helps a lot.
You said you started with 3 only in 2016.
2016.
Where are you standing today?
Today we had 7. Today we've got 7 international guests here. Unfortunately, one had to cancel. Ken on the last, unfortunately, medical issues came up and couldn't make it.
No, that's unfortunately, that's
but
part of
it. He wants to come. We've told him
it.
Your invite stands for next year. He's very keen still. It's a good chance he's going to come out next year. And obviously,
it happens.
It does happen.
I was supposed to go to Barcelona during the month, but my schedule was just too packed, you know. So sometimes it's just you just can't do it, like, you know.
It does happen. Yes. There's nothing. We know that's part of the game. The same thing happened
last year as well.
Same thing. Yes, Laura in fact had to cancel last year.
Someone will
So it
always
happens,
end up
yeah,
cancelling.
it does end up like
You
that.
never know what happens.
So you can't put all your eggs in
No,
one
no,
basket.
it doesn't work like
yeah.
that. So it does help to have more guests. The less guests you have, the more dangerous ground you're on in terms of your show. If we had a cancellation for our first one where we only had 3 international guests, impact would have been, I think, not so good.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, none of those 3 cancelled. Last year we did again 7, 1 cancelled, so we ended up with 6. Still an increase, people were happy with it.
Yeah.
Same thing this year, we ended up with a similar amount, 1 cancellation, not too bad.
Yeah.
So we kind of work on those numbers really, and we factor in, say, 1 cancellation statistically.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's how it works.
So you budget accordingly.
Yeah.
Like we can
Exactly.
lose this.
Yeah, we can lose this one. Yes.
Yeah.
You are a comic store owner.
Yes,
You and your brother. You've got
that's
your
correct.
finger on the pulse.
Yeah.
Directly,
It helps a lot. Definitely
And
helps
I mean,
a
how
lot,
many years
yeah.
have you had your store? 25
25 years. We've been doing this basically our whole lives.
But I mean, that probably helps quite a lot.
It does. It definitely helps. Cape Town, as you know, is a very small community, a tight community. The geek community is very, very tightly knit, you know, and because it's so small and it's new, a lot of people know each other, even the cosplayers. There's a lot of interaction between the different geek elements, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the Marvel group we also had, day after Infinity War premiered. You had a group that was already planned, last year November?
Yeah, no,
They basically already
well,
finished the group, most of the group
they
members.
definitely started that.
And initiatives coming from con-goers.
Yes.
That's very nice to implement.
Yeah.
Where you also, advertise on your page and groups and everywhere there is going to be a Marvel group.
Yes, that's right.
And I think people like that.
Yeah.
If they, with
Yeah,
Devin
no,
and
sure, no,
that
of course.
initiated with that as well, and with the 501st Legion Star Wars tomorrow as well.
No, look, we do what we can. We listen to what people say, and if it makes sense to us, we do it. You know, I mean,
There's some things that just don't make sense.
Then there's some people ask things that are really ridiculous. As a fact.
I don't want to know all the
And
emails
we
and
just
stuff
don't
you
go
always
there.
get you have to
We
work
just,
through.
no.
I wasn't hugely when I was helped run a show, but cosplay was something that I am aware of, but I'm not in the community, so I don't understand the ins and outs. And there's ways in which we're trying to, because I think generally if you don't know how to organize it, then you shouldn't do it. At the same time, we didn't want to ostracize people who wanted to come and cosplay, because it's really important. So it's tough because if you're going to you want to do it right. But you can't that's the tough thing is you can't please everybody. You just can't.
No, that's true. That's a fact.
And no matter what, no matter what you do, someone's going to complain.
The most difficult thing when organising events like this is trying to keep as many people happy as possible. Because there's always someone that wants to complain about something.
Yeah. No, you can't avoid that. The more people you attract, the more the chances are that something's going to be unsatisfying for. Sometimes it's not really valid, but that's what it is. Sometimes it is valid, we take note of it, try and change it. I think the first year was a bit of a fiasco with the tickets. We weren't used to the idea how ticket sales work. So and we went through that, worked out after that. So we learned. Yeah.
And Declan, tell me, how does, with your first time being at an African convention like this, how does it compare to other countries that you've been guest?
It's weird. You go to some shows that are very media based, you go to shows that are more festival based. I think this is kind of a nice mix, but I think also everyone kind of knows what they're talking about. I was on a panel about Superman earlier, and everyone's kind of done the research and they know what they're talking about. I think a lot of it comes down to the audience as well, and I think everybody who's come up to me just seems so kind of glad that the show is happening and that it's their first one time coming. They'd heard about it, but now they're excited to check it out, and they're just really grateful that you're
a lot of new fans.
It's really nice, and that makes one it's how it's the organisers is where it starts, and how everyone's looks after you or treats you, and then it's the dealing with the people day to day, and everyone's just been so nice. I would say it's a convention centre, but has a kind of a more festival atmosphere, and it's not too big. I wouldn't say this is a particularly big show, but it's also not particularly small either. And it seems to be kept going on. It seems healthy.
You have how many comic book launches
We
this
had
weekend?
12, and tomorrow they're going to do a panel, an open panel with 12 local comics,
That's
all
amazing.
independently published. As you know, this country has no infrastructure or resources for publishing comics. So any creative people into comics here, they have to rely on publishing themselves, printing themselves, marketing themselves. Literally, it's a
Yeah.
one-man show in terms of producing a book, and it's a hell of a challenge.
It's interesting. I was on a panel. I think it was a diversity panel earlier on, but the conversation came up of like what's next for, like, say, South African comics, and I was saying how in Ireland we have a very close knit comics community. I know people who do web comics in Ireland. I know people who do Marvel comics or DC comics or creator-owned comics or self-published comics, and we all tend to know each other because Ireland's quite small.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, it seems like you have a close-knit community here, but what you have, which we don't have, is the population that could potentially actually support an industry of some kind.
That is true.
Ireland's only got 6 million people or something like that.
South Africa's almost 50.
Yeah, we are like 50 plus 50.
Yeah,
plus million,
that's
yes.
it's possible.
It's possible. There's a
You
potential here that needs to be tapped into.
Yeah,
basically.
you need somebody with money to come in and set
Yeah.
up a company as such.
That's right.
But it seems that there's room there for creatives to actually kind of grow and do something that's more South African rather than something that's secondary to an American market. I see the amount of Irish creators that I think are genuine talents. If they only had resources available to give them the platform, they're just not there. Whereas I think with the population you guys have, it's actually possible.
Yeah.
Well, there is potential.
Yeah.
But one of the problems is definitely, people don't recognize comics here as, I know a lot of the local
entertainment form.
publishers, for instance, they struggle, they don't see producing a comic book or a graphic novel as valid. It's, why must we do this? So they actually struggle to be heard in a sense,
Yeah.
They can produce the best work, but it's not prose, it's not a novel, it's a comic, so
so
they don't see it, They don't see value.
Large market
Yeah.
in South Africa with novels and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
the literature market is very good, but take it to comics, there's still that stigma, it's still there,
Yeah,
We haven't gotten away from
Even Savage Town, one of the reasons I
Yeah.
did it is because crime fiction is massive in Ireland. It's loads of crime novels come out and everyone loves them. So I wanted to do an Irish crime novel, but it was a graphic novel, and try and do something that Americans would see what Irish comics are like, because it was Irish creators making it 100%. And then for Irish people, they could see like what a graphic novel is that wasn't superheroes, and it's it's not setting the world on fire or anything, but it's done well in both ways. But it was never going to be as selling what superhero books were, but it was an attempt to go, here's something an access point for you, and here's an access point for you, because it's stupid that there isn't more crossover here,
There's also trying something different for yourself as artists as well.
Sure.
To keep it interesting. I mean, I don't know, with writer's block, if you use that term. I mean,
But it was more like being an Irish creator who works primarily in American comics. I don't really make stuff that's Irish. It's been American superheroes punching American superheroes.
no, but
which is
I
fine.
mean, it's a nice if you have different projects you work on. It's not the whole time.
Writers tend to have various projects. Artists tend to have one that they concentrate on for years and years. So yeah, it was definitely good to have something, else coming out of a secondary
Inspired
project.
you with other projects as well.
Yeah, definitely.
It's very
it has.
linked to everything. How you get, a good idea. Let's go back to this again or what?
Yeah, definitely. But again, as regards being able to make something Irish, because I felt I was in a place in my career where I could get a project greenlit and made and cover expenses, and then that exists, but I had to do it through an American publisher. You know what I mean? I couldn't do it through an Irish publisher; it just wasn't feasible. So I'm kind of like, I'm excited to see what you guys could do, given focus, opportunity, and of course somebody very rich to come along. Who's willing to lose money for a few years.
That's the
That's the
problem,
biggest thing.
It is a challenge.
Last question before we finish, and it's again basically South Africa and Ireland. What is the road ahead? I know for stuff like conventions like this. It has. I must say, in the past 3 years, it has been. I've seen in Cape Town, especially, spreading much more. People know what's cosplay or FanCon, but what's the road ahead? And how must one approach it?
Tricky one. Well, we will grow the show organically. It's kind of one of the principles that we work on. Things need to grow organically. To try and force
Don't
it.
run before you got
We don't
even
want to do
called.
that.
Yeah.
We will take it as it comes. We will grow it as it needs to grow, and what we can do basically. Comic-Con Africa is also coming. That's up in Johannesburg. That's a huge commercial venture there run by Reed Pop. So there's a big step there, because I think there were rumblings of that, and now that's also happening. So there's definitely going to be a big jump, I think, in the idea of comic conventions in South Africa. And of course there's Icon up in Joburg as well. They focus mainly on gaming, but there are comics. It's a geek show. There's definitely more of them happening. But I think Comic-Con Africa is probably the biggest one that's going to make a difference in terms of where this is going.
And you said they're Repop.
It's Repop actually.
They have an infrastructure.
They now.
See, the weird thing is, I quite like Repop in the States because they do American shows.
Yeah.
I don't like going to other countries that are like American shows.
I know what you're saying. That's unfortunately what it's going to be.
Yeah, so
it looks like it to us.
Because they have the infrastructure.
Exactly.
They can provide.
They have the resources. They're going to put on a massive show. From what we've seen, it's going to be a huge Repop show like it is anywhere else. We're going to focus on what we want to do and the way we do it. A comic-focused, creator-focused show. We're not going to emulate. We can't emulate that. We don't want to emulate that. It's going to be a pure-hearted comic.
If they have the resources to do those things, then why would you possibly try to compete with that?
We can't. So it doesn't make sense. We don't want to and we can't. So that's it.
But I would say, just to reiterate again, I think you're asking where we'll go. I think as long as local creators are being supported by it, like if I have a new comic and I debut it here, and I can cover my table costs, and I walk away with a bit of money in my pocket that I can put towards publishing my next comic. That's kind of more important.
Growth, yes,
and with respect to cosplay, cosplay will come anyway because people are excited about making their costumes. But you don't make money at a show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There needs to be some financial
type of.
Yeah, I know, which is of course is very important. Like it's just you need people to be able to come and not profit as such, but like capitalize on the work that's been put in. Otherwise it's not sustainable as a creative kind of endeavor.
No, it's only fair. There's no harm in making money. I mean, it's just live in this world, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
But of course, there are I think boundaries where I think we don't want to overstep, and we don't want to be completely commercial and just there are shows where I think the moment they see there's not money to be made, they will run basically. And I'm afraid for Comic-Con Africa in that way, it smacks to me of a show that I think might go that route. It is a commercial venture at the end of the day for them. So
it's not a cultural one.
It's not. If it's not going to work, it's fine. But people must just realize, if it doesn't work, they're not going to put it on again. It's going to be like that.
But you guys will.
Yeah, we're going to put it on. I can't say. It's not true to say it has to be commercially viable for us to do, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, but if it's too much the rate, you won't obviously can't. But you'll try to work around what you can.
Our retail stores, that's our bread and butter.
Yeah.
This is
like we stopped doing the one in Dublin just because it wasn't my money. I helped to organise it, but I wasn't paying for it, and the person who was paying for it was like, I just keep losing money every year, and it's a great thing. But he was also.
But you can't sustain it.
You can't just do it for the sake of doing it.
No, you can't. It doesn't work like that. So there's a balance. I mean, we try and keep that balance going.
Yeah, that is unfortunate that you have to put bread and butter on the table at the end of the day. You can have the best passion in the world, but
there is a way of doing it.
Yeah, there's a way of doing it.
It's
trying to find putting that together.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Andre.
And all the best of luck for tomorrow for both of you. And I hope you have a lot of new fans and customers.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And that you enjoy the race. How long are you staying still in South Africa?
Got a couple of days.
A couple of days.
Till Wednesday at least, I think.
Wednesday, I think.
Yeah, so you've got two days to enjoy.
So a few days,
that'd be nice.
Enjoy, but
the downside sometimes to going to conventions is you just go to the convention hall and you see nothing else.
That's how you go.
So I'm glad I didn't want to come all this way to just.
No, exactly.
Especially your first time to another country.
Big time. Big time.
Yeah, especially with beautiful city of Cape Town.
Yeah. Really, I heard it was terrible. No,
you almost got two very angry guys here on the stage.
Drop the mic at the end and walk away.
That's the last thing you want to hear.
Cape Townians are very finicky when people to Cape Town. Guys, thank you. All the best of luck.
Thanks, man.
Just a special thanks to our sound sponsor, Cape Audio College. Without the mics, they would have heard our voices.
Not possible, of course.
At the end of the day. We'll be back with our second podcast tomorrow where we're going to a bit of cosplayers. So look around on the channel, perhaps there's something you would like. Thank you very much.